Everyone. Welcome back again for part 4 of our circuitry sessions. We're going to be evolving now beyond the collective abstract sensing circuit group that we explored last week, which, if you recall, has a lot to do with the past and reflecting on our experiences that we have gone through and deriving wisdom from those experiences and sharing those experiences with the collective so that the collective whole may grow as one big experiential body, right? So it's a very important energy for humanity because it propels us into the unknown and really gives us the energy and the perseverance and the determination and the interest and the longing and the desire to collect new shared experiences so that we can expand our collective wisdom. And again, all of those experiences are ultimately shared, such as a library. Like, if you go into a library and you see all of these books and all of these different articles of history and these stories, it's a great example to reference in terms of being able to understand and make sense of how that energy expresses itself in our world. And as I described last week, the collective abstract sensing circuit has a dancing partner, okay? And its dancing partner is the collective understanding or logic circuit, which is essentially an exact replica or mirror on the opposite side of the body graph. So when you look at the body graph head on, logic will be on the left and abstract will primarily be on the right. And they sort of crisscross through the ajna and through the sacral. And they actually, in many ways, balance each other out. It's really actually interesting to consider the fact that, yes, they're mirrors, and how the energy actually expresses is in many ways a balancing act, because the collective sensing or the abstract circuitry is basically run by hot, irrational, emotional desires, right? Filled with this wave motor function of expectation that, oh, if we do this, then maybe, just maybe, we'll get the experience we so long for. Whereas on the other side, the balancing act, that unexpected, unpredictable messiness of that particular circuit group, is the job of the understanding logic, which is much more about the focused sharing of detailed formulas and patterns to ensure future security. The understanding circuit and the job of logic is to hammer away at our hypotheses and to form opinions and to come up with schedules and to craft plans and then to get people to follow through with this rhythmic, detail-oriented process where we repeat things in a steady and consistent manner to ensure stability, to ensure predictability, and in many ways to eliminate uncertainty to find certainty, right? It's like the job of the mathematician is to get down into the core of the formula to be able to derive an absolute so that an understanding can be formed and so that progress in terms of the collective logic can be made, and then we can all feel more secure in the ability to actually understand how things work. Now, again, just a bit of a review from last week. We learned that the super keynote for the collective abstract sensing circuit is sharing, and that's the same with the logical circuitry as well. They share the same super keynote, which is sharing. So there's lots of sharing going on here. They also share the same visual sense. So the sensing circuit is visual and the logic circuit is visual, okay? And again, just to review, the collective sensing abstract circuit symbolizes our quest for shared experiences and in gaining wisdom, celebrating the excitement of newness and adventure, distinct from the predictability favored by the collective understanding logic circuit, which we'll cover in detail today. The sensing circuit spans various centers in the body graph, emphasizing the emotional solar plexus's role in seeking novel experiences and manifesting action, with outcomes that may either fulfill or disappoint one's expectations. And it's one of the circuit groups where you'll find the themes of blame, right? So if you see someone who has this kind of energy and they get all excited about an experience and then they have the experience and it's a disappointment, there's almost a susceptibility or a tendency to want to blame the other or to blame some kind of circumstance. And, you know, what good blame does for us is very little. And especially in the context of this energy, really, truly, if you're living correctly as your design and you're functioning as your type and you're functioning according to your strategy and inner authority, your profile, experiences are meant to be what they are in order for us to gain wisdom, right? It is what it is. The stream of feeling, which we mentioned, which connects the root to the throat via the solar plexus, drives progress through emotional crises and experiences, emphasizing a non-logical feeling-based approach to life's adventures. And like we'll look at today, its exact mirror. And when I use the term mirror, what I mean is that within the context of the body graph, there are certain channels that are literally on the exact opposite side. And the term used to describe that is a mirror. So like the 4130 is a mirror channel to the 5818. They're basically the same thing, just operating through a different context because they're part of a different circuit group. One drives us into unexpected new experiences, and one drives us to perfect and make better our collective experiences. Okay? And it's a big thing to realize too, if you have a lot of abstract sensing energy in your design, like it's similar to the letting go of the disappointment and the expectations game, to realize that it's never about being perfect. Okay? Perfection and the quest towards the absolute best that anything could possibly be is the job of logic. And I'll use some great examples today to help you guys understand how that can show up in our world. So the root sacral G up to the throat pathway reflects a maturation and cyclical process and a commitment to discovery, where perseverance through uncertain journeys leads to wisdom and the eventual sharing of experiences through storytelling. Okay? It's like being under pressure to go through a cyclical experience where it's a requirement of you to persevere and trust that you're going to be in the right place at the right time so that you can come out of the entire experience as the witness to it all and be seen as the experiential leader. And then finally, the head ajna throat stream of sensing engages the collective mind in recalling and piecing together past experiences into stories. So this is again the ajna collective awareness process, very different from the solar plexus process, because the solar plexus process is never really clear. It's based on feelings and sensations, whereas the ajna actually has the capacity to visualize what happened. Right? So you're recalling and piecing together past experiences into stories based on a visual recollection with a focus on shared beliefs and mental ideas rather than factual accuracy. Again, like a historian telling a story based on their own unique perspectives of what happened doesn't mean it's necessarily an exact, truthful, fact-filled interpretation. It could be their own subjective experiential interpretation. Okay? Again, this is also very much so a stream in which you'll see a lot of teaching capacity, right? Or people who hold a position where their ideas and the way in which they stimulate the collective is seen as an outer authority. Because again, remember, anytime you see channel definition from the head ajna to the throat, what we have here is we have a pre-verbal analytical capacity to basically structure insights before we speak upon them. And if you have someone with any of the energies defined in their chart, again, a great deal of their energy is about being an outer authority. for others. But again, like we covered, never an inner authority for the person. Okay, so there's a difference between sharing your stories with others as an outer authority and making decisions based on how things actually feel. Let's say if the person was emotionally defined and that was their inner authority center. Also, I didn't mention last week which centers are missing from the sensing circuit. You'll note that the heart center and the spleen are not accessible directly through this circuit group, meaning the primary concern, again, is emotional experiences, not survival, right? We can be propelled to engage in dangerous experiences with no concern for whether or not we're going to make it out alive. Again, I use the example of climbing Mount Everest. All right, so you can have a drive and a desire that can outweigh and be disconnected from, in a sense, the fear for one's survival. It can be fearless in its approach to new experiences. And it's not about tribal or collective or individual survival, okay, or the nurturing of the young, which we covered in the defense circuitry. It's about gathering new experiences, even if they're dangerous, even if they may bring us harm, right? It's an interesting thing to note. The heart center, again, being inaccessible by this circuit group, represents the fact that the collective sensing circuitry is not about being competitive. It's not about proving yourself. It's not about even necessarily being the best or being in control. The 21st gate is the gate of control, right? Not about being in control of an experience or trying to prove yourself in the context of a new experience. It's again just about the desire to be able to come up with a new idea and to share wisdom based on cyclical past experiences so that the entirety of the collective may benefit. Because remember, back to the tribal collective, again, the heart center being part of that ego circuitry and its tremendous responsibility to engage in communal capitalistic structures sort of gets a break here, right? It's not called upon in the context of new experiences. The energy for that is derived from the root, from the sacral, and from the solar plexus, which are the three real primary motors. So as you can see, even just visually, before I start putting words to the body graph, you can see visually that, again, the collective understanding logic circuit is literally a mirror, okay, to the sensing circuit, which is one of the things I find really remarkable about the body graph is the symmetry involved, right? And how all of these component pieces from the mandala all come together and find their unique individual representation within the context of the centers, within the context of the channels, and how it all works together basically flawlessly. And you'll see when we begin to describe the interplay and the story behind it all, how this energy works together. It's amazing. It works together visually, as in there's this circuit, there's a start point, there's an end point, in the way in which the energy actually flows from gate to gate to gate to gate makes sense too, right? There's a logical sequence to it all, to the entirety of the body graph, including the logical circuit. Okay. So the collective understanding, also known as the logic circuit group, represents a deeply concentrated and focused capacity within humanity to organize our lives around patterned predictability, formulas, and plans. It is here within this circuit group where you will find the greatest emphasis on getting things right, figuring things out, and the discipline to perfect whatever it is that we're working on. Like a violinist who practices for 7 years to hone their skills, or an architect that lays the foundation for a future building project through their detailed drawings, this energy allows humanity to refine concepts into actions based on a mathematical intelligence and formulaic awareness. Skill, talent, organization, and a critical, judgmental, detailed approach to solving problems allows humanity to forge its own path into the future with a certain degree of reliability and certainty. It's not an absolute, right? There's no absolute guarantee, other than maybe the sun will come up tomorrow. But that's not to do with humanity, right? It's about being able to set patterns into motion and have those patterns perpetuate or repeat for however long one chooses or one needs, okay? Is the job of logic and how we apply it. This circuit group, unlike its mirror, the collective sensing abstract circuit group, is capable of setting and maintaining a rhythm that can be relied upon by others for security and safety. Sensing is inherently risky business, sensing being the abstract process, okay, is inherently risky business as it is so often clouded by irrational emotional desires and fantasies. Logic, on the other hand, understands that in order to achieve a desired outcome, a formula must be rigorously tested, repeated, experimented with 1,000 times, and put into practice with a talent and a focused determination for it to become true, for it to become real, manifest, and reliable. However, understanding is the most energy-starved of all the circuit groups, as only the 58th gate down here, which is simply a pressure, the 52nd gate, the 9th gate, and the 5th gate provide either a fuel or a sacral availability to the circuit group. And none of them, if you look in the context of how it's structured in the design, none of them actually reach the throat center, which, as we know, is the center for manifestation and action taking. Therefore, this circuit group is often dependent on energy and resources from other circuit groups in order to fund its experiments and research. Think of a hospital receiving grant funding, private grant funding from some ultra wealthy family, as is the case that we see here where we are in Arkansas, right? Like you get these private families, these private tribes that ultimately fund the development and the research capacity of our logical experimental world, okay? Just something to note. It's why sometimes experiments and being able to get something new into the collective that has been rigorously tested to a qualifying degree or standard can be extremely difficult. It's hard to find the energy. And it also makes people with these particular gates, and especially the channels, extremely important and valuable to groups as people, right? So if you yourself have the 5818 or the 58, the 52.9, the 515, it's for you to recognize that you bring a very important type of energy to groups and to collective organizations, whereby either your critical capacity to judge and perfect things, or your focused and concentrated capacity to work out details, or your rhythmic reliability, okay, either one of those three channels allow for the expression of this entire circuit group, allow for the collective to be what it is as a stable force in our society, a reliable force in our society. You know, sort of like showing up to work every day on time when you're scheduled, right? People who are able to actually do that will typically carry energy in one of these areas, okay? And if they don't, it may be a good time to question how you personally have been conditioned and to look at how you may have been personally conditioned to show up in a repeated, sustainable, reliable fashion. Because without that energy, it's really hard. If it's not built into you to show up every single day and repeat the same pattern every single day, or at least every single working day, well, frustration, adrenal burnout, fear, all these things can show up. And again, to be able to see how that shows up in your unique life, you would need to perform a bit of an analysis on your own design and also consider the people that you spend a lot of time around. Right? So if you're around other people, whether it be your partners or your family members that carry this kind of collective energy, it's to recognize how they may be conditioning you to be consistent or to be reliable or to be repetitive in your actions and in your doing. So let's talk a little bit about the streams now and the pathways. So there's 3 of them. So the first one that we'll cover runs from the root to the spleen and then to the throat. Okay. And then there's also one that runs from the root to the sacral to the G to the throat, and then down from the head through the ajna and into the throat. And also, just for a reading technique, whenever you guys are reading a body graph or trying to analyze a body graph to derive its meaning, always read from the bottom up to the throat and then from the head through the ajna down to the throat. So you're collecting the keynotes as you go from the bottom up, okay? However it may show up in that particular person's design, bottom up to the throat, and then head through the ajna down to the throat. Okay, that's why I mentioned those pathways in that order. So like sensing, this circuit group is a complex mixture of twisting, interconnected channels that all work together in the constant rhythm of organizing humanity to help ease the doubt, okay, and lead the collective into the future with stability and a plan. So, again, running from the root through the spleen to the throat, you will find what is called the stream of taste. And whenever you see that word taste used in the context of the collective, my understanding of that is not so much about taste as in you like the taste of ice cream. Actually, I guess that would be a good thing. It's like or dislike. Okay, it's like you have a certain taste for music or you have a certain taste for ice cream. Because the collective is very critical, can be very judgmental, and it has likes and it has dislikes, and it will usually gravitate towards the things that it sees and it likes, and it will move away from or dismiss or refuse to give energy to those things that it doesn't like. Okay. This energy, sort of like music, again, so you have a certain taste for certain music or a taste for certain art. This energy provides us with the fuel and intelligence to challenge with an insatiable drive to correct and perfect patterns, setting the foundation for the eventual expression and presentation of collective talent and the encouragement of applied solutions. Encouragement coming from the 16 and the solutions coming from the well here in the 48. Again, a lot of it will either be liked by others or it will not be liked by others. Sort of like think about American Idol auditions, right? Where you get a singer up there and the judges really like them and they give them an invitation to move on to the next round, or you get people who are just totally terrible at singing and the judges totally dislike their voice and totally dislike the way they present their talent or lack thereof of talent and discourage them and choose not to invite them to progress to the next round. Okay. This energy is deeply concerned with the striving for perfection. okay, and is designed to never be satisfied. Why you'll see the 5818, design of channel of judgment, and design of insatiability. It's never satisfied. Nothing's ever good enough, even when its talents are used in highly remarkable and extraordinary ways. There is always room for improvement. When given the right kind of support, think apprenticeship, and allowance to practice and refine itself, this energy can flourish into a mastery that can ultimately be shared with the collective. Given the fact that this energy is splenic, it often runs cool, as in the opposite of hot, which, unlike the solar plexus, which runs hot, okay, and will often display in people as an unemotional intelligence. Not to say that they are not emotional in their nature or don't have emotional intelligence. It's that the spleen being cool can come across as deeply unemotional, where there can even be a lack of empathy towards other people, okay? Focused exclusively on refinement and mastery of the task at hand. This stream can be ruthless in its pursuit of perfection. For example, think of the extreme criticism and insatiable drive for perfection between a dance teacher and a ballerina student. In such a dynamic, the teacher may embody the role of the relentless critic, always pushing for more precision, more grace, more control. This teacher might never seem satisfied, often focusing on the minutest of errors rather than the accomplishments, under the belief that highlighting faults, no matter how small, will spur improvement. Comments might rarely be tempered with praise. Instead, they could be sharp, direct, and unforgiving, aiming to carve out a dancer from marble with sheer force of will and words. Okay? The ballerina, on her part, might internalize this drive for perfection, transforming every critique into a personal challenge. Each practice session, 16th, each practice session is a chance to reach the elusive standards set by her mentor, and every performance is an examination. She may spend hours at the bar repeating the same movements until her feet bleed, driven by the belief that perfection is just one more rehearsal away. The ballerina might also start self-critiquing, seeing flaws in her movements, even where there are none, striving for an ideal that keeps shifting just out of reach. Whenever you see someone with the 5818 or the 1816, the last thing they probably need from you personally is a critique of them, okay? Especially if they're a 5818, because what can happen with this energy, although technically it's meant to be critiques and judgments shared with other people, is that people end up internalizing and personalizing their own judgments. And that's when it can be turned into fear. It can show up as anxiety. It can express as being very self-critical of one's own talents and one's own abilities, even if they're exceptionally skilled, right, in what it is that they're presenting. It's an energy that's meant to be shared existentially with others, not necessarily internalized, which can be an entire process of healing for a person to learn that about their design and to come to terms with how that energy is naturally designed to express and function. So again, just before we move on, the 5818 drives us to be perfect, and the 4816 is the eventual talent and expression of that perfected process. Okay? And they work in harmony. That is, the talent is dependent upon the fuel and the potential for refinement that this channel ultimately provides. And of course, if you have one but not the other, you can have someone who's incredibly critical and judgmental but lacks a talent, okay? Or you can have someone who's incredibly talented, but they may not have the experience of a mentor or someone critiquing their talent to help them perfect that talent and make it even better. And also, it's interesting to note, and it works in with the sort of English definition of talent versus skill in design. You'll see this is talent is like an innate thing that you're sort of born with. It's like an ability to do something naturally. Whereas someone with a skill, so if they have the hanging 16, such as the case in my design, it's more about practicing things over and over and over again until you get it right, to be able to form that skill and eventually express a sort of talent. Okay. Just a bit of a differentiated approach. And again, with the 48, you can have people who are incredibly deep and have a resource of solutions that they can share openly with others in the collective, but they themselves may not have the skill to be able to actually experiment with it, put it into practice, and transform it into something that becomes like a shared currency, common currency within the collective. Okay, we're going to move along now to the next sort of pathway. So running from the root to the sacral to the G and eventually to the throat is where we will see the joining of the format energies, which I mentioned last week are incredibly powerful. So whenever you see someone with a 52-9 or a 360 or the 53-42, these energies color all of the other channels and gates that may be within the context of someone's design. Moving through to the power column. And unlike the other two channel pathways, just like in collective sensing, this particular pathway is not technically a stream because it doesn't pass through an awareness center. It's more mechanical, energy, direction, and leadership focused. It's not so much about what the splenic awareness is able to control or the ajna awareness is able to come up with. It's a response. It's a pressure to respond and to go in a certain direction and to express that direction with the collective. And it's not necessarily connected to an awareness center, which if you have energy sort of in this area, but you don't have definition in the centers, you can think of it as one's collective direction and form an expression of leadership can be deeply conditioned by the themes associated with those other open centers, okay? And again, if anybody had just the 52-9, 515 or the 731, it would be to bring them back to their strategy and their particular inner authority process. Again, if they had the 52-9 or the 515, it would be sacral if they had the open or undefined solar plexus, okay? So it's like encouraging them to experiment with tuning into their response and availability rather than being overwhelmed by and pressured to do things based on social emotional expectations or a nervousness that may arrive. Or again, the not self strategy of the open solar plexus being avoiding confrontation and truth, so they don't actually do something that they're actually meant to be doing. Meant as in available for, right? Coming from a place of their own authentic sense of availability. So this pathway represents a pressure to still our energy and be productive in our capacities to focus on details, to be concentrated, combined with an availability to repeat patterns and be in the collective flow of life, moving towards a secure future, all of which is deeply influenced by the alphas among us that are elected and tasked with the job of leading groups with their plans and promises into the future. For example, considering this pathway, in a tech startup scenario within the collective understanding logic circuitry framework for this particular pathway, individuals work in unison. Project manager guides the pressure towards detail-oriented productivity, while a lead developer utilizes pattern recognition for coding efficiency, okay? And the rhythm of collective work is established with a quality assurance role ensuring standards through repetitive testing. A CEO with alpha tendencies provides clear direction, steering the team toward a successful software launch that addresses current and future future. Again, keynote being the future market needs, because the collective is basically always trying to catch up with itself, and itself is concerned with the future. So it's this like perpetual forward moving concern for the future, that what we do in the now moment is helping to secure our tomorrow. Okay, to ensure that we stay up to date and are prepared to deal with what may come over the horizon by repeating a pattern that has been proven to work in the past and can be relied upon in the future. Okay, so again, all of this is done in the context of this pathway under the guidance of a leader resonating with the group's vision. I will mention that 731s, again, have a tremendous responsibility in their influencing capacities over how the collective shifts and morphs and utilizes its energy to repeat a pattern according to a plan, right? So the 731 comes up with a plan, the 1762 comes up with the schedule, and together these two forces really do have a tremendous influence over how the collective expresses its talents, and how often and to what extreme it may repeat those talents. All right. And then last but not least, running from the head through the ajna and eventually making its way to the throat is the stream of understanding. Here, again, we're now in the collective mind. We're no longer dealing with the collective identity or the collective fears. This is the collective mind. And as we know, the ajna operates over all time. Splenic is in the now, solar plexus has its waves, and the ajna can go backwards and forwards. It can be either in the now moment if it's individual, it can be projecting into the future if it's collective, or it can be recollecting the past and try to realize and make sense of things if it's the sensing. The collective logic, collective sensing, individuality, all of which represent the way in which our minds interpret things over time. Here you will find the pressure of doubt causing us to question the validity of patterns. If something seems incorrect with a formula, a question will be formed which requires an answer in order for the doubt and mental anxiety to subside. Only once a formula has been questioned, tested, and experimented with until proven correct can true logic emerge and be relied upon for the formation of subsequent opinions, which is done through the context of the 17. That can then be utilized to organize the collective through communication styles that are heavily substantiated by details, which is the role of the 62. However, this awareness process is filled with themes of anxiety, such as the fear of chaos, which you'll see in the 4th gate, and the fear of challenge, as you'll see in the 17th gate. And I'm mentioning these because, again, and I didn't mention so much the collective fears for the spleen, maybe we can cover that later, but the anxiety associated with the ajnas through the 4th gate and the 17th gate in terms of this collective understanding process. And with the 4th gate, the mind becomes fearful and anxious that unless you have the answer and take a logical approach, all hell will break loose and perpetual chaos will ensue. Okay, sort of like getting really anxious about whether or not your flight will show up on time according to schedule, okay, because you have a really important meeting in the destination that you're flying to, and now your mind's filled with anxiety that, oh my God, if my plane doesn't show up when it was supposed to show up, there will be chaos on the other end, and now I'm going to have to be chasing this projected plan, and things aren't lining up according to plan. Again, now the mind is anxious and demands an answer, right? So doubting whether or not the plane is going to show up on time, the 4th gate goes, oh my God, I need an answer in order to assuage my anxiety of total chaos. With gate 17, the mind becomes fearful that it won't be able to stand up against other people challenging its opinions. Okay, so it may withhold sharing its opinions even if they're correct. even if the person really does understand what it is that they're talking about, if it's just hanging, like it's a 17 without the 62, the anxiety may arise that, oh my gosh, I have these opinions and I see how and understand how things should be organized, but I'm fearful that at the moment I open my mouth to speak about it, someone's going to challenge me, so I'll just keep quiet. Okay? And of course, that sharing process ideally is guided by one's strategy, one's inner authority, and can express in a multitude of different ways. This stream is the main outlet for what we often perceive and experience as organizational communication styles. For example, if someone were to have both channels activated in their design, that is the 63.4 and the 17.62, they would likely be the type of person under pressure to organize others in logical ways through detailed communication, like an event organizer demanding that everyone play a specific role at a specific time to achieve a specific outcome, all of which would be pre-planned in their mind, in their own mind visually, and expressed outwardly as instructions or schedules. This is also the area in the BodyGraph where you will find the energy for naming things, as is the job of the 60-second gate, with its ability to translate visual understanding into logical expression. For example, giving what we see as our four-pawed furry friends the name Felis catus, or cat for short. Okay, and just as an example, Ra, who brought through human design, was a 60-second gate first line and laid the foundational details for human design in order for the collective to experiment with it. Okay. So again, just to review, there's basically there's two streams in this format power column pathway. The 5818, 4816 is all about being able to provide the collective with like the perfected talent and the solution to deal with anything and to work on what has been spoiled and to express a certain degree of refinement and excellence and mastery so that we all may benefit from the talents of others, you know. And now that you know this, pay attention when you're listening to the news or you're scanning the internet and you're reading these headlines like new company moving to town seeking to hire new talent, right? And what do you have there? You have a new company, so you have some tribal capitalistic enterprise that's moving into town. And what does the tribal capitalistic enterprise require in order for its material success? It requires talent. It requires skills. It requires people who have been through an apprenticeship process where they've been able to master an understanding of their particular craft or their particular area of expertise so that it can be shared with this new capitalistic business venture and the whole thing can work in unison and harmony, all guided by some alpha that holds that embodies the collective vision of whatever that project or that new business venture may be. Again, you'll see it now all the time. All the time. It's everywhere. And again, the collective circuitry being what it is, being so much about the entirety of the human experience, is it's very prevalent. Again, anywhere you look, you'll see these keynotes pop up. Okay, so now would be a good time to if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And also I will comment on the different conditioning impacts of this energy. Because remember, I'm always speaking to this energy in the context of it actually being defined as a channel in someone's design. And I'm not even considering the different line variations, right? So these channels can show up in different ways. You can have, for example, I'm just going to use one example with the line theme so you're aware of this. Even though this is a shared collective energy, you can have someone who has the 16th gate in the first line and the 48th gate in the first line, and they're not necessarily sharing their talent with their collective, they're investigating what talent is. Whereas you may have someone with the 48.5 or the 16.5, and they're most certainly the ones who are going to be projected upon as being talented and expected that they share their talent with the collective. Okay, so that level of interpretation is obviously chart specific, but it'll add deeper depth and context to your own chart and the understanding of the charts of the people around you. It's like collective logic is about doing things in repeated fashion with talent to ensure that the future happens in a way that the mind wants it to happen or desires for it to happen or is fixated on it happening. And a lot of it has to do with like pre-planning, coming up with a scheme, coming up with a plan, coming up with a formula, and then the generators showing up to actually build it, the manifestor showing up to actually initiate it, and the projector showing up to guide it, and then the reflector showing up to assess the process and to ensure that everything's working on track.
Can you, with the lines you were just talking about, would it be like with all the lines, like the 1, 2, 3? Does it have like a more personal effect, and then the 4 to 6 more outward?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And you can even break it down further. You know, the lower trigram 1, 2, 3, and the upper trigram 4, 5, 6, and even in the context of those energies, there's still differentiation. So like a 16.2 Bagel, I'm pretty sure you're a 16.2, right? I think you might be.
Sorry, who are you asking?
Don't you have the 16th gate second line in your design?
Maybe.
I'm
Yeah.
almost certain you do.
No. Oh, wait. Yeah, I do. Yeah, you're right.
So it's
Sorry.
like so the second line would be like the projection of enthusiasm, the projection of skill. Right? So people see your skills, people see your abilities, and they call out your skills to be shared with the collective. Right? The and then the third one,
Because I have the 48.6.
Okay, so the undiminishable resource. So the 48.6, and every time you see a 6 line in a gate, it represents a quality of energy that actually has a perspective over not just the entire channel relationship, the relationship between the 48 and 16. It understands that relationship, but it actually has a perspective on the entire circuit group, which is really profound and something to think about, and ties directly into the 3-stage process of all 6 lines. The first 30 years is you're bumping into solutions, right? You're bumping into these different collective solutions that can be applied and shared, but you're not necessarily sharing them, nor do you not necessarily understand how they can be used, how they can be understood, how they can be shared. And yet as you mature and go through with your own energy the triphasic process of that 48th gate, you may find later on in life, later on in your experience, you have amassed this incredible wealth of solutions and insights and perspectives on how to better the collective and to be a resource for the collective, because you have this profound understanding of how all these different components work. You could almost think of it, Anna, for yourself. Just going through this lecture today is helping you to fill up that well. Because like before today, you didn't understand how all these energies work together. You were just bumping into solutions. You bumped into human design solution. You're like, wow, that looks pretty neat. Let's try that out. Let's experiment with that. And now today, you get to, and I'm a 6, so of course I'm giving you my 6th line perspective. It's resonating with your 48.6. You're
Right.
getting the whole enchilada. Now you're like, wow, I
Right.
actually understand how this entire process works together. And I bet you in the future, people are going to want to tap into that depth, tap into that well. And it's actually a really beautiful line if you read it. It's the kind of energy that gives, and can continue to give practical solutions to the collective so that the collective may feel secure and may feel safe and may feel healthy in dealing with unexpected crisis. Because remember, the body graph operates in a multi-dimensional, all happening at once, all interrelated sort of way, okay, where all of these
Right.
mirror channels constantly have relationships with the other side. Okay, so again, the 48 is providing depth in a solution to the collective in times of crisis, in times of change.
Right.
So,
Cool.
yeah, filling up the well. Oh, Nikki was saying I have a 48.3 personality Sun and 48.6 personality Mars. So personality Sun, so Nikki, for you, this would be a big one, right? So this is like your radiance is to be a source of depth for the collective, um, and basically like a well of talent, a well of solutions for the collective. And Mars would bring like a highly energized energy to that, sort of like yeah, a highly energized radiance to collective solutions. And I think it's interesting how you've joined us for almost every single one, if not every one of these sessions so far. Again, filling up the well with your human design understanding. And Bagel was saying, my wife and I have a bunch of electromagnetics in the circuitry. We only lack the 15 and the 4 in our composite between all of these gates. So the 15 is the gate of extremes. It's like the 5 will repeat a pattern, and then the 15 dictates to what extreme that pattern is repeated. Sort of like the 5 will go to work every day, and then the 15 is like, well, you work from 9 to 5. That's the extreme, right? It's like the extreme of the tempo or the rhythm. So maybe you may find that there's an inconsistency in the fixedness of your pattern. Some days you guys do this for this amount of time, and then the other day you do this for this amount of time. You know, I find 515s, especially in the context of relationship, they'll have a very, very fixed rhythmic pattern where they do the same sort of things over and over again. Yeah, and then the 4 seeking answers. Yeah, I thought the 515 was why we didn't dance together very well. Well, apparently, the 515 can make. I know it does. It makes incredible. Can make incredible dancers. Being in the flow. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, let's move on to commenting on the conditioning impact of this energy, because I think it's really important, and it's an area in design where none of us even remotely have a chance from escaping. Like, it's guaranteed that you're going to come in contact with criticism. You're going to come in contact with plans. You're going to come in contact with people who want to organize your energy around their opinionated way of doing things and get you to repeat patterns in a fixed way going into the future. It's just the way the collective operates in terms of how it can guarantee its own survival based on a predictability and a formulaic approach. So again, if you have a lot of energy in this circuit group, congratulations, you have an in to the collective logic club, and you play a really strong role in being able to do things in a logical manner, or to offer guidance in a logical manner, or to initiate, if you're a manifester, in a logical manner, or again, to reflect the logic of a group or not, to see where the patterns break down. But of course, we can be so totally conditioned to be logical, right? To be predictable, to have a plan, to be perfect, to share our talents, even if we have none, you know, and to be focused. I mean, that's the big one. And like I mentioned, the format energies, like think back when you were in elementary school, sitting there in class, conditioned to focus and concentrate on what the teacher was explaining, okay, and then immediately expected to experiment with that math formula and figure it out in your mind, okay? Now, again, group dynamics, meaning when you bring a group of people together, often those format channels will be defined. If it's a large enough group, especially if you're in a place like a lecture hall, where all you need is one or two people interspersed in the crowd to bring that focus and concentrated energy into the dynamic. But still, you yourself may not have it. So you may be focused and concentrated while you're in the classroom or you're in the lecture hall, and while you're learning, the moment you step away from that group conditioning aura, it's gone. And you may not have it within your own nature, right? And yet the mind will struggle and the mind will fight and the mind will do its darndest to still be focused and concentrated. And of course, this will lead to extraordinary levels of frustration in the context of that energy, to try and be still and work out the details, even if you don't actually have it. And of course, conditioning's not always bad at all. Conditioning can be very healthy when you enter into relationships correctly as yourself. And I think it's another important thing to mention, just like I did last week, where you will never see a projector, a manifester, or a reflector with the 52.9 or the 515. Okay, this is the realm of the generator. It is up to the energy and the sustainability and the availability of generators to be still, focus on and work with details, and to repeat patterns in a fixed extreme over and over again, so that the collective can be brought into harmony and into unison and have a predictable future based on the kind of work that the generator puts out and is capable of repeating. Again, projectors, if anything, are there to guide that energy. You can imagine a projector with a 1762 and a 16 kind of being like the project manager, okay? And then again, you have the coders who have all the actual talent and the focus and concentrated capacity, and then some manifester that may be the 731, who's the alpha, there to initiate the group and to lead the group, while the projector guides with their organizational schedules, and the generators provide the true power and the true availability to actually get things done and to work through the problems. Okay. Oh, yeah. So, again, the conditioning impact of this energy to be mathematical, right? To use math to solve life's problems. And the example I have coming up soon is just that, is a mathematician, quite a famous one. Okay. So we are all conditioned by the energy of this circuit to seek patterns, predict outcomes, and share logical insights. This drive to understand the world leads us to form and test hypotheses, contributing to a collective pool of knowledge. However, this conditioning can also lead to a mental fixation on certainty and a propensity to dismiss what cannot be logically explained or predicted, potentially limiting our openness to new, unconventional, or subjective insights that don't fit the prevailing models of understanding, which is where the individual comes in. Okay, anywhere in your own personal design where you have gates or channels that carry the themes of individuality, this is where or it's in a way, this is what the collective is sort of afraid of. And this is what the collective, both on the sensing and the logical side, tries to thwart or prevent, because the individual brings newness. The individual brings mutation. The individual brings a unique perspective that can, in a moment's notice, literally break down patterns and make collective formulas that have been so rigorously tested obsolete, simply because they bring a powerful insight or a unique knowing and awareness that they've come up with, and they present it. All of a sudden, the collective has to go back to the drawing board, right? Yeah, so just be conscientious of that in the context of your own design, is how individuality has an effect on the collective, can have an effect on the collective when its insights are expressed clearly in a new and mutative way. Otherwise, individuals and the tribe are basically subject to these patterns, these predictable patterns, schedules, formulas, leadership styles that dominate really the way in which we experience our world as a collective whole. So just like the collective sensing, the abstract circuit group, which I've said many times now is an exact mirror of this particular circuit group, there are 7 centers, 14 gates, and 7 channels involved in the logic understanding circuit group. So it's very complex, and you get this crossover pattern. Okay, you got the root and the sacral bring a tremendous pressure and availability to launch us in a certain direction, and to then to be able to communicate based on an intelligence, an organizational mind that seeks to bring order to the chaos, and to ensure that plans are running on time and plans are running smoothly. So the root, again, brings a pressure to be still, the gate 52, to still our energy, because this stillness, what it provides is an opportunity to examine and to work with the sacral availability to focus, wait, and repeat patterns. Okay. Logic demands like solitude and quiet and environments where it can experiment and think and analyze without interruption. That's why, again, when you go into like a classroom, it's often so, or like a library. What's the number one rule in a library? Don't make a peep, right? Be quiet. Why? Because everyone's sitting still, focusing on their work or focusing on reading books. And it is through this stillness, this tranquility, which you'll see in the 52nd gate 6 line, that logic thrives. Okay. The G center brings the love of the extremes in humanity. The 15th gate is capable of accepting and taking in all forms of expressions of human extremes and seeing it all as this collective love and this collective identity that makes up what it is to be human. And then the 7th gate, it's called the role, the self, and interaction, is where we find an identity that, again, is given a role to serve on behalf of the collective. So again, if you have the 7 or you have the 731, look at the line themes of that 7th gate, and it will give you an idea of your role in collective interaction in addition to or in resonance with your profile. Meaning, if you're a 6-2 and you have the 7th gate 6th line, which is the gate of the administrator, this would be a resonant role for you. Again, if it's not in your profile or in your incarnation cross, where your role is to be an administrator, to have a high perspective and to organize the collective around logical plans. and to basically be able to identify and lead and have influence over other people based on recognizing what their role should be. But yeah, the throat brings the themes of influence, skill, and the expression of details through 31, the 16, and the 62. The spleen brings a collective survival intelligence. Again, different from the tribe. Remember, the tribe's survival intelligence is all about our families and our business and our young, whereas the collective solutions you'll see is more about things like medicine or technology or medicine, technology, transportation solutions, civil planning, these different things that are applied to large groups of people and are less so about personal, like it's not individual or tribal well-being. It's about collective solutions. Like, again, just use medicine as a really great example. Penicillin. It's like, I bet you should actually look it up. Probably the inventor of penicillin had a lot of collective in their design. Okay, or last week we used the example of Orville Wright, who invented the first, with his brother, invented the first motorized flying aircraft that could be controlled, and we know that he had the 5818. Okay, so this was a survival intelligence, correcting on what has been spoiled, and collecting and presenting and sharing collective solutions. So the head is the pressure to doubt the pattern, and the question to question the logic. It's kind of like having a healthy skepticism. And it's a mind that becomes anxious if it doesn't have an answer that it can understand or helps to solve or assuage its doubts about the future. Okay. The ajna represents the formalization of an answer. Okay, so that's actually where mind comes up with an answer. And then the forming of an opinion that is eventually expressed through the context of the 62. So what happens when you get the doubt, come up with an answer, forming an opinion, substantiated by details? You have a logical organizational being, right? Someone who wants to organize others based on their own understanding of what is so. There are 7 channels in this particular circuit group. The first and foremost, which again is really important because it's a format energy, is the channel of concentration, a design of determination. This is a focusing energy on establishing a pattern with the energy to work with details. Again, if you look at Terence here, Terence is, and I'll get into his example in a minute, he's like a virtuoso in the realm of mathematics. He is an extremely intelligent and very popular professor. He deals a lot with like prime number theorem. If you try to listen to one of his lectures, it'd be interesting to see like how far you can make it, because his capacity for expressing logic and mathematics is just out of this world. And I think he's actually going to be doing one of those master classes soon. I don't know if any of you've heard of that product or that sort of online course company called Masterclass, but he's actually going to be teaching math soon. I thought it was kind of interesting. And you'll see when I get to his bio just how accomplished he is in the context of this energy or this field of mathematics. And he carries the channel of concentration. Okay. The 515 is known as the channel of rhythm, design of being in the flow, equates to a routine rhythmic energy for repeating a pattern to a certain extreme. Like I said, you're going to go to work every day from 9 to 5. Okay. Every day, 9 to 5. Or every other day from like 12 to 3, whatever that extreme may be. And of course, that can show up in a lot of different ways. It's not just about working necessarily. However, if you've got the whole channel being a generator, being engaged in work that brings you satisfaction that you can repeat is like a big thing, right? You don't want to be stuck in a job where you're doing the same thing over and over again, but it's not satisfying for you. If you have that energy, again, looking at the lines, looking at the planets, how it all shows up, conscious, unconscious, is where you could derive greater insight for that. So 731, channel of the alpha, design of leadership for good or bad, equates to the elected and selected collective leader with a plan for a better future, also known as like a pack alpha. So 731s, again, you will see them in politics, you will see them in corporations, you will see them in entrepreneurial startups where you have someone who's a visionary leader. Other people come to them for future-based planning and strategies. And yet also a 731 can be like a pack alpha in the sense of having influence over smaller groups too. It's not just large collective organizations. It's kind of like you may see a 731 and they're like a gang leader or something, right? And they have their influence and they have their role. And it's all about 731 being able to find a group in which you can have influence over and not be influenced by other people, right? You'll never see a wolf pack with two alphas. There's always one alpha. And if there's an alpha that shows up and there's already another alpha, either they fight it out for the position, right? Or one alpha leaves and the other one uh, takes that dominant role. 5818, channel of judgment and design of insatiability, is a criticizing and challenging awareness, meaning it can be challenging internally, but it's an energy for challenging the collective. Okay, so when someone has a certain perspective that they understand to be correct, this is the energy that will go out and actually challenge the perspective of somebody else within the collective. Again, sort of like being judgmental or being critical, like being a lawyer, right? Where you're defending one particular perspective against the perspective of another. And again, it's under pressure to work on what has been spoilt and correct it, meaning what's been broken, what no longer is viable or seems to be breaking down. This is the kind of energy that will jump in and want to work on it, to correct it, to make it better, to fix it. 4816, the channel of the wavelength, the design of talent, is the depth and potential skill for expressing collective solutions. And it's so often seen as the expression of encouragement, right? So if you're a 16 or you're a 1648, there's nothing healthier for you than to receive encouragement for a job well done. You know, if you can really hone your skill and you can really hone your talent and you share it and people are like, wow, that was amazing, that recognition can go a long way in helping these types of people to, again, have the confidence. The 16 is all about confidence, the confidence to then further experiment and further refine their skills. And again, the opposite is also true. If someone expresses a skill and there isn't an encouragement or there isn't a recognition or of their enthusiasm, well, they can end up quite bitter, right? They can feel frustrated. They can feel as though they've been judged unfairly, which would again come from that 5818. The 63-4, running between the head and the ajna, channel of logic, a design of mental ease mixed with doubt, is a questioning mind under pressure to find the correct answer, which can ultimately be summed up as like a healthy skepticism. If you're a 63-4 or you know people who have that channel, it's very healthy for you or the people that you know to basically be constantly questioning things. You know, it's like if you present the human design system to a 63-4, the first thing they're going to do is doubt its validity. The only way in which they're going to get over that doubt is through experimenting with the formula and rigorously testing it and trying to understand, okay, where does it break down? Does it make sense? Does it live up to the scrutiny of the collective? And if so, then maybe it's a viable solution that we could apply. Okay. And then finally, the 1762, channel of acceptance, a design of organizational being. And by the way, this whole acceptance is getting other people to accept your opinions and follow suit with your details. Kind of like 17th gate is in order to rule, those who wish to rule must first learn how to serve. And it's like, this is the kind of energy that again wants to organize others into a logical pattern, okay? And it's all based on a visual awareness that then forms opinions based on substantiated details and then seeks to organize people around these concepts that it comes up with. And it's not always about people. I mean, you'll see in the 17th gate, fourth line, it's called the personnel manager, where again, it's like wanting to organize people around your personal opinions and being like a personnel manager. But it can also be like creative and visual, sort of like an architect or a photographer who can picture the perfect scene in their mind first and then lay out this logical plan in their mind how they're going to capture that shot and then go ahead and follow suit with being able to get it on film.
I just had a quick question. Are there any compromises that you see within those channels between people that are sort of ones to like look out for, that are like, hey, like if you've got a compromise here or there, like take note because it could be a bigger issue than or something that you might not even recognize? Because my wife and I, she compromises my 58, I think. She's got that whole channel. I have the 58, and I sort of see how that plays out. But are there any other compromises you see within these channels that make a difference?
They can all be difficult. Compromise, by definition, in any circuit group can be challenging, especially without awareness. It's often just referred to as like a dominance because the person who has the hanging gate is basically subject to the flavor of the channel qualities that the other person carries. Um, and with the 5818 being a projected channel, it would be like you feeling frustrated for not being recognized for the energy that you bring to making things better. Or maybe she takes all the credit for making things better and you're not necessarily recognized for the effort that you put into it.
Mm-hmm.
Being a fuel with the 58, again, it's not an awareness process. It's just like you bring the energy to want to refine things, and yet sort of the final critique, that's going to be
That's hers.
that's hers,
Yeah.
like
No. Yeah. No. I get. I know where that line is now.
yeah.
Trust me. But
Okay.
but
Yeah.
do you ever see that, like, anything where those other compromises between, just any of those other channels? Because I know there's other areas, especially with like my mother-in-law, that like she compromises me in a couple places. But I just try to be aware of it and take note. But if there's anything that you say stands out the most between those, I'd love to know that. Otherwise, that was my main question.
Yeah. Well, every single one, it could be a really sort of painful experience in terms of compromise.
Mm.
Every single channel can carry its own uh, version of that can be difficult to deal with.
Okay. Well,
I
like I
can
said,
use another example. Like you use the 5818, so you bring the fuel to work on what has been spoiled, but she's the one who's got the final critique, and she may be a little bit more judgmental and perfectionistic in her tendencies.
mhm.
And like the sort of the transference there may be, well, you try to be even more perfectionistic than her. I mean, just like
Yeah.
I would suggest just like letting go of that, you
Right.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
There's her mom has, like, I've got the alpha channel, and her mom has, like, I think it's the 7, I believe. And so I've tried to figure out why she keeps wanting to, like, step up, in certain situations, and I think it's stretching her. And so sometimes that compromise, whenever she's around me, she feels like she needs to, like, manage things or, like, be the one directing traffic when uh you know she's not that's not necessarily her skill set. Have you ever seen that alpha channel get compromised in a way that's
oh yeah,
you know
yeah.
difficult?
Personally,
Personally, okay. Yeah.
yeah, because I'm a 31, so I have a degree of influence, but I'm not a 7. I'm a 1/8/31, so I have influence through my creative contribution, but I've worked for a 731 alpha. And basically what that showed up like was like, okay, I had a certain degree of influence, uh, but the final plan and the final, this is what we're actually going to do, was up to them. And I had no say at the end of the day unless I was invited and recognized to share my particular insights about, you know, uh, what was to happen. We were expected to follow the plan of the person we were working with. And of course, it's for me, that's like, and that was a challenging situation because we were basically the face front for the business, and we were the ones who were having this like public influence and actually managing and administrating the whole thing, and yet we were compromising to this alpha's plan in the background as to how we were going to do it, and it didn't always work out very well. I mean, ultimately we don't work for that person anymore, but it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, it can be difficult because the qualities of the gates that are hanging can be overshadowed by the person who has the whole channel when you're in direct proximity. Okay. And
Yeah.
it can be really tough. And again, if you look at the line qualities too, that would add another layer of
Right.
insight into how it all plays out. But
Okay.
using your mother-in-law as an example, she does have a role to play, but you're the one with the role and the influence. So it
Yeah.
can be
Okay.
difficult for people when they don't have compromises are actually really difficult. And the I just finished like last semester connection analysis with the IHDS, and it was actually the one subject that we covered the most is compromise channels in relationships, because they can make or break a bond. They can make or
Hmm.
break uh, the workability of a relationship dynamic if it's not understood for what it is.
Right.
Especially if you get a situation where like the person who's being compromised like has the hanging gate, it's like
Hmm.
part of their incarnation cross
Yeah.
or something. Um,
Right.
if there isn't like a
Right.
mutual understanding.
Because they're probably going to be less likely to receive that conditioning that would come from like say if it was a two defined centers and then there was a hanging gate and it was a bridge, the other person could just being themselves make that person feel extremely frustrated that because there's not a lot of flexibility for them to be able to move around in that space if they're not conditionable there.
Exactly. Exactly. You're fixed by the other person. So again, yeah, flexibility is a great term to, or inflexibility, because you're always bowing down to, in a sense, the energy of the other person. Um,
Oh, thank you.
you're welcome. So let's go on to, unless there's other questions. Anybody?
I just had like a small question about the lines. Like, is there kind of like a general um description of the lines, or is it different for every gate how they're explained? Because
Yes,
in
there's
the
a general description. I've actually posted that in the Power Facts,
oh, okay.
and it's based on the profiling gate of the profiling gate 10th gate. So you can look at it from that perspective. Um,
Okay.
and also you can just understand the mechanics of it by just the basic upper and lower trigram dynamics, where the first is the foundation, the second is the projection, the third is the trial and error, the fourth is the drive to connect and externalize, and all of them build upon each other, right? It's like the second is the projection of the foundation. The third is the experimentation, trial and error process that comes after having gained the foundation and gained the projection. And
Right.
now it tries to go out in the world and do something with it and to connect and learn more, always in the context
Mm,
of the channel. And the fourth is like, okay, I'm stable, I'm fixed, I've been through the investigation, I know what the projection's all about, and I've been through the trial and error. So the fourth line represents, okay, this fixedness, like this is what it is, right? And a drive to connect and get it across. And of course, the five gets projected onto as being the ideal of the hexagram that's been through all of those processes and is now kind of like
mm,
the master line. And the six is aloof from it all, looking to the next gate.
yeah.
The six
Okay.
doesn't even actually have much concern for the gate that it's a part of. If you look at all of the different gates in the sixth line, look at the gate that follows it in the mandala sequence, and that's actually the gate that it's most concerned about. Interestingly enough, it can be detached from its own energy.
Can I just ask one more thing? I was also wondering, like, if you have like gates or a channel in these circuitries, but it's in the design one, so the unconscious energy. Does that just mean that it's like kind of harder to access?
Can be.
Or
It can be. It doesn't necessarily mean it's actually harder for the person,
hmm,
but remember the keynote is that it's unconscious. They don't identify with it as being who they are. I mean,
right, okay.
again, for example, I'll use like both myself and Bagel, we have the 16th gate unconscious. So we have
Yeah.
skills, but I had no idea that I had skills until I started to practice, until I start to practice something. And then I'm like, oh, wow, I'm actually half decent at this,
And so,
or I suck at this. I better practice some more, you know. And
and so could it be like if you, for example, have the same gate as someone else and you have it in your design, the other one in their personality, that it kind of like gives you this like example? Or you kind of recognize it in the other and then in yourself?
yeah, hmm it would come across in it. Yeah, totally. It would come across in their personality. You would see it. You would see it.
Mm-hmm.
And, for example, the 1648 is often associated with music. And, so if you got the 1648 conscious, there's someone who identifies with being a musician and may actually be a really good musician, and their personality is, I'm a musician. Whereas if it's unconscious, it may be more of a need for music
Right,
in the life, but not necessarily to be a musician or someone who identifies or is
right.
seen in the collective context as a musician. Um,
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah,
Okay,
it's a
thank you.
very, it's a great question in addressing, these deeper levels of design too, where you have things that are unconscious, you have things that are conscious. What does that look like when it shows up in the chart?
Yeah.
Um, okay. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, Prana said design side can also be body trait, where personality is more mental. Channel of talent could look like physical skills in design and cognitive skills if personality. Precisely. It's exactly it. And the red is like physical. It's remember your red, the imprinting on the design side, you received while you were still in the womb. And then 88 days later, 88 degrees of the sun later, you were born and received that personality imprinting. And it's the black that we identify with as ourselves. It's like that. The black gets integrated with the hardwired bodily vehicle that is what the red represents. So it's like we've got these personalities inside of these forms, and the forms have an imprinting, and the personalities have an imprinting, and it kind of works together in this complex duality. Terence Tao is a virtuoso in the realm of mathematics, a discipline that demands not only innate talent, but also an extraordinary command of logic, intense focus, and meticulous attention to details, qualities in which he excels profoundly. Born in Adelaide, Australia on July 17, 1975, to a mathematical educator and pediatrician, Tao's prodigious intelligence, he basically was like a child prodigy, and intellect became apparent when he taught himself arithmetic at the tender age of 2. Tao's logical capacities have been the cornerstone of his academic endeavors, enabling him to analyze and solve complex mathematical problems with a clarity and depth that elude many. His ability to see through the noise and identify the underlying patterns and principles is nothing short of remarkable. This capacity has propelled him to the forefront of his field, earning him the prestigious Fields Medal in 2006, often equated with the Nobel Prize in Mathematics. The focus and concentration in 952, that Tao brings to his work are evident in the sheer volume and quality of his contributions, he's an 8th gate, contributions to mathematics. His research, he's a 61.4, spanning several domains, including harmonic analysis, partial differential equations, and prime number theorem, is characterized by a level of concentration that allows him to pursue long chains of reasoning to their conclusion, undeterred by their complexity or the intense intellectual effort required. His attention to detail is another attribute that distinguishes Tao. His written work is exemplary, marked by precision and clarity. His papers are meticulously structured, reflecting an organizational mind that systematically builds upon established knowledge while pushing the boundaries of discovery. He is known to scrutinize every nuance of his proofs, ensuring that each step is not only correct, but also elegantly presented. Beyond his individual work, Tao's organizational skills shine through in his ability to collaborate effectively with other mathematicians. Again, remember, very collective is all about collaboration, sharing, working together. He has co-authored papers with over 30 different mathematicians, testament to his ability to integrate different perspectives and approaches. A task that requires both a high level of personal organization and the ability to organize complex ideas into a coherent framework. In summary, Terence Tao is a mathematician of unparalleled logical prowess, whose exceptional focus and concentration, attention to detail, and organizational mind have seen him solve problems that have puzzled mathematicians for decades. His contributions not only reflect his individual brilliance, but also a collaborative spirit has greatly enriched the mathematical community. Terence holds a position where he imparts his considerable knowledge to others as a prof of mathematics at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. And he's heavily involved in research, and his presence at the university enriches the academic environment tremendously, inspiring both undergraduate and graduate students with his passion for mathematical inquiry and exploration. So if we zoom out now and look at his actual design, you'll see he carries two very significant channels that are part of this collective understanding logic circuitry. The first and foremost being a personality activation. And Anna, you were asking about, so what does it show up? What is it like when someone has it black versus red? So here's a personality, here's a mind with a design of determination. And if we just simply look at it this way, what does he have? He has a mind with a capacity for focusing his energy on establishing a pattern with the energy to work with details, right? A mathematician who's basically won like the Nobel Prize of mathematics, go figure, has the format energy for the entire logical circuit group to be focused and concentrated. Okay, and to work out the patterns, right? And to criticize things and to work on things and to perfect things. Then, of course, he's got the 1762 channel of acceptance, design of an organizational being, logical, opinionated mind that can then share and teach and express what he has discovered through the expression of details. Quite remarkable, focusing energy on establishing a pattern with a visual awareness that forms opinions based on substantiated details and organizes. And he's a lecturer, he's an educator. And he's very charismatic. He's got 3420. If you watch his lectures, he's a manifesting generator, right? So he's got a tremendous capacity to like on the spot be thinking and communicating this highly complex mathematical formulas and theories, educate and contribute with a passion for 3955, a passion for focusing and concentrating on solving some of the deepest mathematical problems that exist in our modern day society. Okay. And like I mentioned before, being in a room in an educational environment where someone carries a 52.9 automatically gives all those within touching distance, okay, or like aura distance, access to the energy. So yeah, and again, he's very well known for his lectures. You can look him up on YouTube. Again, I challenge you to sit through one of them. It's remarkable, just how he speaks and how much information he's able to process consciously and then share through his organizational detailed teaching style. So much charisma and passion for what it is that he's talking about, and it's quite remarkable. Yeah, wonderful example. So these are the kind of people who condition us to be logical, right? Is our professors, our teachers, those who inspire us with their understanding of mathematics, of design, of engineering, of organizational skills, project management. I'd even say politics, right? Where you're tasked with organizing large groups of people, be able to experience future stability through coming up with a plan and then having people follow suit with organizing themselves and their talent around that plan. Job of the collective. And of course, each and every single one of us either plays a part through our definition, through our activity gates in this circuit group, or we are conditioned by others who carry it, and we can either be negatively conditioned or positively conditioned. All depends on how we perceive it, how we enter into those collective experiences. Especially doing so correctly as ourself is a huge win and advantage if you know how to do that. Yeah, and again, like Bagel was using example earlier with partnership with his wife, seeing how these different collective energies, even in the context of our one-on-one relationships with others, can present themselves, and how with certain levels of knowledge, you can be able to navigate the rigors and the demands and the critique and the challenge and the expectations so often involved with this logical process that we be perfect, that we be correct, that we be right, and that we be stable and secure, dependable, reliable, and that in the end it all works out and can be answered through mathematical formulas, through coding, through an understanding that can be shared with the collective, so that the collective may feel more stable, secure, and joyful. You know, there's a great joy that the collective energy brings to us in our ability to trust that 1 + 1 = 2, and that our flights are going to be on time, trains are going to be on time, you know, that I'm going to show up and you guys are going to show up for these circuitry sessions on time, right? It's all the logic in our nature that allows us to trust in a future potential. Otherwise, it's all abstract, uncertain, unpredictable, unreliable, and forces us to go into tribal survival mode or individual survival mode, which we'll get to next week. Maybe not quite integration. I think we're save integration. Maybe I will do integration next week. Start with integration, then go into the knowing circuit, right? Where there's these different ways in which humanity can survive, either as a collective, as an individual, or as a tribe. Okay, so a reflector design. So remember reflector design keynote being a sampling and reflective aura, ideally the hub of a community, there to be an objective observer. Again, being a reflector as it's taught in design, there's a big component again of being someone who can be seen as having an objective perspective on a community. Like Prana mentioned during the AMA, it's a great point where to see who's different, to see who's standing out. And in the context of the collective, you could think of it as your objective perspective on whether or not the details are being adhered to and the patterns are being adhered to and what needs to be worked on and refined in order for the solution to be applied in a way that helps people to overcome their doubts. So you actually do have a lot, relatively speaking, of collective logic in your design. Um, Primarily, again, the energy to work on details. You don't have the 52, so you may not necessarily feel that you have a consistent ability to be still and work on details. Maybe it's a detailed energy that is happening while you're moving. Maybe if you, I don't know, again, how do you think that may show up for you? Being like a detail, having an energy for detail and the energy for repeated fixed patterns, but not necessarily having a stillness where you're sitting still and focusing on something, maybe more of an active, um, the fifth gate being in the left, kind of more of an active. Interesting how you've got it in the nodes on both sides, and it's a blend between the observer and the focused. It's kind of like perceiving fixed patterns in your environment with the drive to focus on details. Like,
Yeah, it's confusing. But yeah, I can't. The focus is an interesting one for me. But yeah, I can resonate with that. Not being able to sit still.
and yet still being detail oriented, you know. Um, the fifth line, people may actually project onto you that you're detail oriented. Maybe you're not show up as a thing. Um, Again, I think the question would be, are you surprised in how your energy sometimes may gravitate to repeating certain fixed patterns with a detailed adherence, sort of loyalty to the letter of the law approach to things? Like, do you like to see things be done correctly and kind of have a perfect approach to things? Do you find that sometimes maybe you're possibly overly critical of yourself or other people if they're not adhering to details? Which could be like a strength if, again, you're a reflector in a group offering an objective perspective and reflecting back to the group what you see and what you understand. Maybe you have an understanding of what needs to be worked on and refined and sort of repeated in a more precise, logical fashion so that the group can be able to achieve their projected or planned outcome.
Sometimes, yes, I pose my question with the individual circuitry and the 1-3 because it's it seems like sometimes the value to the individual is dominant in my design versus the objective collective understanding of things. Should I give you an example?
Please.
The reflector chat, Roger had mentioned the side reel not being included in human design. And logically, I feel like it's coming from that place and I am okay with it. And then there's a desire for me to express, well, like some people might resonate with that. I have no idea. So it's not so much sticking to like this logical pattern and the way things ought to be for the collective. There's like a wild card with my individual circuitry and abstract circuitry. I have a ton of abstract circuitry. So just I maybe just time figuring out what kind of outer authority I can provide to people in my own unique way might be the only thing to help me gain understanding.
It's interesting if you look at the activations by circuit, you have an equal balance between knowing with 7 activations, sensing 7 activations, and collective 7 activations. But it's what you know and what you feel and desire, and ultimately what you come to understand is kind of all blended, and each have actually have within the context of your design almost a fair representation. And maybe like what I heard from your sharing there was being like accommodating of multiple perspectives within the collective, and still having a voice of encouragement and a desire to express a unique perspective, even with the understanding that there are so many different collective options out there or ways of being able to perceive or interpret the information. And as a 1-3, again, if we tie that back to your profile, the individuality in you is always going to be under pressure to discover something new and to know and to gather insights about a unique quality within the collective that can then be shared in a stimulating way. Kind of like you're under pressure to know and gain insights about human design so that you can talk about it with others and share in a new experience that can bring you a sense of surprise. And at the same time, there's obviously a part of you that does resonate to the logic of design, the mechanics, the gate, the centers, how it all works together. And maybe being an investigator that can bring you, a sense of joy, sense of excitement, sort of satisfy your curiosity to ponder the mysteries. Yeah, how's that land for you to see that again you have fair balance between activations within each one of those circuit groups? Kind of interesting.
That was, yes, that was very nice keynoting. Thank you so much. I will have to re-listen to what you just said. That was very nicely keynoted together.
I think it's a great example, like going back to one of Anna's questions, like with channels, like what happens when people have a blend of the different channels. For you being a reflector, what we're looking at is a blend of the different gates, and having fair representation between those 3 major circuit groups. It's like you have a fair say in each one of them, but none of them are predominant in your design. It's like you're open to the individual perspectives, you're open to the understanding process, and you're also open to experiencing life for what it is and gaining wisdom. You're not going to necessarily be overly rigid in your logical approach to things, or overly rigid in your personal perspectives, or overly rigid in your beliefs. It's more about, okay, what can you collect from the experience and what sort of insights can you have and then share with people when it's correct for you to do so. Yeah.
And you're right to bring up the pressure for the individual circuitry, the 39 and 38. That's a very strong part of my design as well that I experience. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're on cross of tension, right? Which
Yeah.
I think this is something I actually want to mention. Just give me a sec. Something I noticed back when I was taking PTL 1. 2 seconds. It's worth it. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so these are the rave has to do with your incarnation cross. Yeah. And I found it really remarkable because Jovian Archive keeps this online database of all the different um, from all the different charts that they've run over the years, which right now is a collection of over like 42 million chart calculations. So it's a pretty fair representation of people's designs. And here you'll see is all these different human design crosses that have shown up when people have run their charts. And the most popular one by a long shot right here is the right angle cross of tension, which is a 3839. So are you that? Yeah, this is you. So you have, interestingly, the most popular cross in terms of people naturally resonating to human design, running their charts through their software. And I'm going to read to you from the book sort of Ra's interpretation of this energy because I think it's wonderful. So I'm going to read this right from the textbook. So I noticed this years ago and I was like, huh, that's kind of like a standout data point. Okay, so let's see, 38, 39, 48, 21. So right angle cross of tension, people with creative depth who understand that life is a struggle, yet know that struggle provokes spirit and purpose, making it worthwhile. So here is an energy seeking purpose, understanding that life is a struggle, but what is my purpose? What is it that I'm here to accomplish? What is it that makes all of the difficulties of life worthwhile, right? And I think it's really interesting how human design, in many ways, provides the answer to that very question for those who care to study it and go into depth with it. Just an interesting 3938, 2 rows up. Oh yeah, you're right, 3938. Let me read the other one. So people whose energy must move outward to release tension by provoking talent, leadership, purpose, and spirit in others, our great button pushers. Well, let's go. I'm going to go from the top down. So Moksha, I still have your chart, so let me pull that up now. Again, thank you, Julia, for sharing and being opening to receiving that. Is there anything you wanted to say before I move on?
No, just thank you so much again. It was very good for me to hear.
Great. Excellent.
It's such a similar chart, no?
Yeah, well, same, but different.
Yeah.
You guys were born around the same time.
Yeah, we must be, no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have the same exact Saturn return. I think
Yeah.
the same line. Weird, we're both here. Very cool though.
Yeah, super
It's
cool.
cool that we're both here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Moksha, different type, your projector.
Yeah.
Right? Not a reflector. And we know that, again, if we just start from the primary keynote, what it is to be a projector, it's about being invited in for our guidance, our capacity to provide basically leadership to groups. Not always, but it can express that way. Working one-on-one with other people is ideal, for a projector, where you get to focus in on that other person. And if we look at the context of your design, how you would connect to other people, what you would bring, just like Julia, is quite an assortment of logical activations. And I would say, given the fact that your spleen is defined, that the 18 and the 48 are the big ones, sort of secondary to the 5 and the 17. And remember, the 17th gate is the right eye. So you can have an eye for details, right? You can have an eye for details, and you can have, based on what you see, the forming of an opinion for what you like or what you don't like.
Mm.
However, again, just going back, we'll come back to that because there's a couple other things too to bring up. The 1848 being in a defined spleen, given the fact that it's also your inner authority process, you could say that yes, although you're primarily individual, that this penetrating awareness in the now, this clarity, and this ability to contemplate and express your unique beliefs and voice for progress and change is also accompanied by and flavored by these adjectives of collective gate activations. So it's like your penetrating awareness in the now is basically flavored by a collective taste for what you like and what you don't like. And in many ways, maybe what you say in the now moment can actually come across as like critiquing and maybe critical, and potentially, I know it can sound harsh, but judgmental, where you see something as a projector, you recognize something as a projector that's not working or you feel needs to be improved upon. And it would be in many ways your role through invitation and the splenic correctness to then share what you recognize in the now moment as a new possible solution that can be worked with, help bring success to those that you're connected with. The 18 and 48 being primarily unconscious. Again, it's like trusting that you're collecting solutions, that you have an eye for detail, and that your critical awareness is something that's basically just going to come through in the now moment when you speak. And yeah, it can either be, again, interpreted as, unwanted criticism, which is the plight of all projectors, is where we try to offer our advice or offer our insights or offer what it is that we recognize without being first invited. And that can lead to a sense of bitterness where you offer people all this advice and these solutions, but they don't apply them. Or on the opposite end of that is you're recognized, and through your presence, through your aura, people ask you, so like, hey, what do you think? How do you think we could possibly approach this difficult situation, and what kind of solutions could we apply in the now moment? And maybe you could speak to them in that moment and share your wisdom and to share your understanding. It's interesting because, again, you are so individualism, and yet your individual inner authority, again, carries these collective traits for wanting to make things better, wanting to collect solutions that we can all apply. And yeah, and the 48.2 is all about recognizing that in order to be better, we can't do things that are bad for us. Degeneracy, the awareness that to successfully establish a new form, one cannot neglect the positive attributes just to accommodate inferior elements. Meaning it's like there's this unconscious awareness within you that in order to achieve success, you cannot accommodate things that hinder or prevent success from being expressed within the context of a group. It's like if there's like person in the group that's holding everybody back because they're not necessarily pulling their weight, or they're not necessarily expressing a skill in a way that you recognize sort of needs to be expressed. Energy can be almost sort of like critical and demanding that an improvement be made. That's one way I would interpret it. But again, it's all unconscious, so it's something more to observe in the way in which you interact with other people.
My friend who is into design was pointing out the 18.3 in detriment as like a thing to, I don't even remember what he said, but something to
An obsession with correction, like Jupiter. Yeah, and this is a Jupiterian fixing. You can think of it as your personal law at a conscious level is to correct things, to critique things, to work on making things better, to work on improving them. And again, you can see if we open it up to the mirror interpretation, is you have the 30 and the 18. So it's this like desire, this like open, graceful, emotional desire to work on things and to make them perfect and to make them better. But like I said before, the 1858 being part of channel insatiability can never be satisfied, especially as a projector. You may find that you're never satisfied with your ability to make things better, that there's always a font of disappointment, no matter how hard you may work on things, that there's always going to be degeneracy within the collective, People come and go in our lives, and sometimes there's not much we can do about it, no matter how hard we try, no matter how hard we struggle. To prevent bad things from happening. Because again, remember the spleen's primary function is to communicate strategies and to be a survival based awareness. The reason we critique and criticize, and the reason we come up with solutions, and the reason we rely on our penetrating awareness in the now is so that we can survive into the future. And the ideal is that we survive in style, that it's not just a struggle, but that we actually find a way to beautify our lives and to make our lives a more enjoyable experience by perfecting things and working on things and honing our crafts and honing our artistic expressions to be as, clean and wonderful and attractive as possible. Because the collective, again, is all about the visual senses, and it's all about seducing the collective through the eyes, and seducing the collective through the eyes by being able to present the collective with some perfected model of expression. It's like movies, when we see an actor on the screen, or even like modern day animated movies, where these highly skilled and talented artists who express their creative vision for the whole collective to absorb. So
yeah, that's cool. I have outer vision as my cognition too.
There you go.
Is there something to be said about the 5 there in the nodes?
We have the 5th gate, 3rd line, 1st line, north node. So this is the context of your environment at an unconscious level, and your perspective, or what you're here to see at a conscious level, is a rhythmic, fixed patterns. Now, this is actually technically called the gate of waiting. So you may find yourself in the context of your mature life, in the north node themes of your life, waiting for something new to come along, something new and exciting to come along that you recognize as a viable, something you like and want to express and dedicate your availability to, but you're waiting for something new to come along. You're waiting for that new desire, you're waiting for the invitation. Just a lot of waiting. Because again, without the center activated and without channel definition leading up to or from the gate, it's really just a dormant, it's called a dormant gate, right? So it's like a dormant activation where actually in the context of your future environment, it would be an important exercise or an insightful exercise to look and see if someone brings the 15 or maybe the whole channel or just general activation to that center, because it's like the repeatability of your fixed patterns is going to be dependent upon those you connect with.
Mm.
And also I would mention the fact that you've got the 14 as well. 14 is a font of energy that allows the individual to work, to earn money through dedicating itself to creative pursuits. And they always say, like, it's really important for 14s to work and do work that they love to do. You know, that it's a passion for you. So work that you can repeat in a future environment that brings you a sense of success and that you can feel passionate about would probably be really important, and also something that's only, part-time. This is not an everyday doing the same fixed sort of thing kind of energy, given the fact that it's dormant,
Mm.
And you wouldn't be experiencing this yet because you're still on your south node phase. So it's really, it's just like conceptual, everything I'm saying for you. That's something you would have.
When do we move in? Oh, I said after the Saturn return that the North Node becomes,
It's
or
actually
is it
after your Uranus opposition, which is
which is like in the middle
yeah,
somewhere?
around the age of 44. So it's not until 2037 that this energy will even become relevant to your environment and your perspective.
Okay, cool.
I think I've
Yeah.
mentioned something like that for you too, with the context of like the 54-6. It's like you have some long-term,
Yeah.
mature theme qualities in your design, as we all do, that you really aren't or haven't experienced yet. So you have no way of being able to relate to them, even within the context of your own nature.
Yeah. I just noticed that a lot of the outer planets are in the 6th line. And then also Pluto is there, which is slow revealing over time, isn't it?
Yeah. Like insights. And so this would be like a generational commonality between us. Yeah, Julie's got it as well. As do I. I have the 43 Pluto. Julie's got the 43 Pluto. Moksha's got the 43 Pluto. So that's like a generational commonality between the three of us, because we were born in the early 90s. I was born in 91. But yeah, it represents a long-term, like very long-term, like technically we don't actually even get to experience the full spectrum of that energy because we don't live Plutonic lives. We live Uranian life cycles. So the best chance we get really is to be able to experience the full spectrum of our Uranus activation. But Pluto is something that's, you're basically going to be collecting insights for your entire life. And when you
Cool.
can share your insights with the collective in a way that helps to make things better and more perfect when invited, you may find that really plays into your signature.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. see. Over. Nikki, are you still? Yeah, you're still here. I can pull this up. Yeah, 4821. Tension. Individual seeking purpose. Very popular design. Yeah. 48. 48 would be in duality. Interesting thing to note too about the mandala. Now that I'm looking at the gates of the spleen run through this quarter of duality over here, and they're basically like all lined up. The 18, the 48, the 57, the 32, the 50, the 28, and the 44. So if you're ever wondering where someone's incarnation cross is, if they have one of those gates in their personality sun, you can automatically look to the quarter of duality when you're looking it up in the books. All right, so 48. And what is your profile, Nikki? Can't quite remember. 36. Oh yeah, it's right there in your name, sorry. So you'd be in the right angle cross of tension. 3, it's called, the right angle cross of tension 3. People with innate depth who bring understanding to problems and provoke the proper skills, spirit, and purpose needed to provide a workable solution. And you can see this, again, this energy of provocation coming from the 39 and the 38. This is to like tease it out of people. It's like there's a problem that needs to be addressed, and you have the energy to basically get people to pay attention to it by speaking up and putting lighting a fire under their butt. That's what the 39, 38 can do. It can be a very provocative, exciting, passionate energy to help solve some of the toughest problems in our collective sphere. Again, the themes of using your depth, which is like an understanding of how to solve problems, and then to, find the skills and the spirit and the purpose needed to provide a workable solution. So I would be interested to know what it is that you do for work, or if there's any tie-in to being sort of a problem solver for other people. That resonates a lot. I am an accountant. Well, there you go. Okay, there you go. And so the 21, remember we covered that tribal. The 21 is like the chief financial officer, has a lot to do with money. The 48 is a depth and resource. So it's like the resource of how to use your money and be in control of your money, right? And the 39, 38 opposition. And maybe you can say that you have a passion for helping people to understand how to control their finances. There you go. I'm an accountant. There you go. Yeah. And manifesting generator, do you find satisfaction in helping people kind of problem solve and get a better handle on and control of their finances, their money management? Yes, I just have to wait to respond. Exactly. You got it.